let's talk a little bit about how composting works. That's
just a quick question. Is it okay to compost newspaper printed with soy ink?
I'm going to talk about that in a minute or two. Yes and no. I'll tell you. So y'all came to learn how composting works, and I'm going to tell you how composting works. I mean, that's what we came for. So all other stuff is just me blabbing on. All right. I think of things as a system. I think of things as a process. And how composting works is you have your inputs, you have your processors, and your outputs. Your inputs, and I've got them in regs, you have to have all of these to make compost. You have to have a nitrogen source, carbon source, water, and oxygen. Your processors, the only one you have to have, bar none, is aerobic bacteria. But you're also going to find in there worms, fungi, help break it down a little bit better, and nitrifying bacteria, which actually kind of help skip a step in the process, more or less. So your outputs you're going to get compost, you're going to get heat, you can get water, and you're going to get carbon dioxide. And don't freak out, you're getting carbon dioxide. You're going to put it right back in the soil, and you get more carbon dioxide sequestration than you'll ever let off into the atmosphere. Okay? So I got this broken down several different ways because it takes this for me to understand it. So how composting works. Raw materials, organic matter, carbon, chemical energy, protein, nitrogen. You can get minerals, including nitrogen and other nutrients, and water. That's all the stuff going in its most basic form. So the optimal composting conditions is more than 5% oxygen. You're going to get more than that as long as you have it kind of loose. 40 to 60% moisture, 30 to 1 carbon and nitrogen. We're going to talk about that ratio many times within this presentation, and I'm going to answer your question too as well with that. 30 to 1, 30 carbon. If you break it down, 30 carbon atoms to 1 nitrogen atom. That's that, that minute. Temperature between 90 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature actually is more of a byproduct, but people like that temperature. That temperature burns off and kills weed seeds. It kills any kind of thing that in the soil that's going to cause you harm, like E. coli. We're doubtful there's going to be E. coli in the soil anyway, as long as you're not composting human manure or carnivore manure, you're going to be okay for the most part. But temperature burns off all that. It's a good byproduct. Some people actually use compost heat to heat greenhouses, to heat various things, because that will put off quite a bit of heat. So what happens in composting? This kind of boggles my head too, and it takes a little while for me to wrap my head around it, but the microorganisms in the soil, the native soil, this is why it's important to have compost next to native soil whenever possible. The microorganisms come up and they oxidize the carbon. So they're eating the nitrogen, they're going to the carbon and they're oxidizing it. And what happens when they oxidize it, obviously they merge carbon and oxygen together. That's why you get the CO2 vapor off. They're also releasing hydrogen, which is why you get the water vapors that come off of that as well. So the carbon's there for them to oxidize, the nitrogen's there for energy, more or less. But as the microorganisms die, the nitrogen they have in them stays in that pile. So they don't evaporate. They take the nitrogen up, they oxidize carbon. When they die, the nitrogen stays there, which is why you have a lot of nitrogen sequestration within compost. This chart I found neat and I had to show because it takes a look at how all organic wastes break down. And over here we have what I call, obviously a lot of people call it too, the hydrocarbon side. Then we have what I call, and this is completely the wrong term, but nitrocarbon. So if you have anaerobic decomposition, it means there's no oxygen. You've cut off all the oxygen supply to what you're decomposing. If you have aerobic, you have oxygen. So there's a line down here, through here, with what you're making. This side, hydrocarbons, on that side, nitrocarbons. On this side, little hydrogen, carbon, and nitrogen is lost. You're trapping everything in. On this side over here, you're letting some stuff out. So if we look at the difference between natural and artificial and the anaerobic side, what I call it hydrocarbons is, this is how your natural gas, your methane, all your lighter than air gases get made. People talk about biogas all the time. You can actually compost and make biogas. I'm not going to talk about that in depth here, but if you trap everything in, keep the vapors from coming off, keep the oxygen out, biogas. Very, very, very neat thing right there. But also, we talk about the guts of animals. They make biogas too. All the cows farting in the fields. You all talk, hear that story, and that happens more on the feedlots, unfortunately, than in the normal cows, but I won't get into that today. Over here we're making peat. Peat gets compressed, peat makes coal, oil. So this is all the stuff that we're trapping the hydrogen. Hydrogen is a very combustible gas. If you trap it, you get things that will give you energy. If you let it go, you get things that feed your plants though. So natural decomposition, plant waste, animal bodies, dung piles, ammonia and carbon dioxide. And of course the ammonia keeps getting processed further and further and it will feed the soil. Artificial, obviously we have our compost piles. They make some ammonia and carbon dioxide. They also make humus. So I just had to show you that chart to show you the difference because there's a lot of different types of breakdown, but we're looking at one specific type here today. A little bit different chart, but it kind of shows you the process of it. I kind of stepped through this a little bit before, but microorganisms, moisture, and oxygen go in to organic matter, which is solubles, protein, hemicellulose, cellulose, lignin, ash. They break it all down. They make new organisms, humus or compost, energy, heat, and carbon dioxide and water, obviously, lead the process. So we talked about nitrogen and carbon, and this is the basics to understand how composting works. And again, the reason why it's hard, I say it's a black art, is how much carbon, how much nitrogen you put in. And I have a general guideline for you, but I don't know if the wood tree I cut down today has, it's 30 to 1 or it's 150 to 1. Different woods have different carbon nitrogen ratios, they grow in different places, have different carbon nitrogen ratios. It's a tough thing, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. The ratio you want, 30 to 1 is optimal. 20 to 1 will work. So anything between 20 to 1 and 30 to 1, carbon to nitrogen. If you have too much carbon, you get no bacteria, you get no heat, you get little to no decomposition. They have nothing to oxidize. They'll get all their energy and they look around. Nothing here. So nothing happens. Too much nitrogen, they have all the energy they need in the world, and you get a big, wet, smelly pile where you have all these bacteria in, but they have nothing to release their energy upon. So they just sit there and steam. The smaller the particles you get things into, the better. If you could get them broken down into atoms again, except for floating away into the atmosphere, it would be a good thing if you could contain them. Nitrogen, what is nitrogen things? I'm going to show you a little bit more about this in just 1 minute. But they're commonly wet and green things. Fresh cut grass, for instance, has a lot of nitrogen in it. Carbon, brown and dry things. We talk about fallen leaves a lot. That's probably one of the best sources for compost carbon that you can get. People ask, and you may be thinking this in your head, well, what my grass clippings, I let them sit in the sun for a week or two and they get brown. Do they have nitrogen? They have a little bit of nitrogen left in them, but that nitrogen evaporates into the atmosphere. So when you get this contained in a compost pile, you get that nitrogen contained a little bit better. This is just a little chart that shows the different ratios for carbon and nitrogen. There's things that are thought of as browns, or high carbon materials, and there's things that are thought of as greens, or high nitrogen materials. So you can kind of see the ratio. It's hard to strike a balance. For instance, if you put shredded newspaper, which you asked about just a minute ago in there, you're getting an extremely high amount of carbon. It's going to take a lot to offset to break that newspaper down. I've actually taken newspaper. People have asked about this, newspaper in the garden. You put newspaper down, you put mulch on top, the newspaper keeps the weeds from coming up, right? I went out actually in the compost piles in the garden, wherever, and I pulled the mulch back, and that newspaper's shriveled up, dry, but not decomposing. So it's hard to get enough nitrogen in there, but you can do it. You can do it. If you get something in there with high enough nitrogen, manures, probably the best one. Alfalfa, it's kind of hard to find, but manures, you get manures in there, you can break that stuff down. Same thing with wood chips. You want manure. Wood chips, 400 to 1. Very hard, but you can break them down. The good thing about wood chips is they'll soak stuff up. Some of these other things won't actually soak anything in. You get wood chips and you get manure. Wood chips will soak the manure in. So a lot to take in at one time, but I just want to just kind of show you some of the ratios. Probably the quintessential composting ingredients are, let me find it, leaves and grass clippings. 20 to 1 and, I just had it, 60 to 1. So gets pretty close. Gets pretty close to our 30-to-1 ratio. Maybe a little bit off, but you know, it's you know, pretty close. So.